issue nationally and statewide. We have some places, some offices have term limits and some don't. So should there be term limits for a mayor? And then also should if yes, then should there be a limit like there is for the governor, for example, that you can't serve more than 2 successive terms? Oh, sorry, my next part of the program. Mr. Spiegelman.
My policy position right from the beginning was term limits. I do not believe that being elected to a particular office creates a dynasty for an individual. Any incumbent that has been elected for several terms generally feels a sense of invulnerability. And in this particular case here at Carmel, we have a mayor that has constructed a $200 million Performing Arts Center City Center project to date, spent over $100 million in roundabouts plus projected long-term interest, has presided over a $400 million Carmel Redevelopment Commission debt, including projected interest, and has misrepresented the cost of every large project he has taken upon himself for the city since time began. So term limits, yes sirree. 2 terms maximum. That's all I'd serve as your next mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelman. Mr. Brainerd.
We have term limits in this country for every office. Term limits as determined by the voters that vote for that official. Not by the state legislature telling the voters who they can and can't elect after a certain period of time. There's a famous story about Abraham Lincoln. He was known for being against term limits. And one of his debates with Stephen Douglas, he said very softly, you know, I'm for term limits. And so the crowd got very quiet because they thought it was a change in position. Then he quietly said, as determined by the voters, not the state legislature. And that's my opinion too.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. Mr. Asatero.
There should be term limits on all elected positions in our country. I don't think it was ever meant by our founding fathers to have professional politicians. The longer a person's in office, the more likely they're to lose touch with the public. And the longer they build these types of different controls that they could, and just control everything. We need responsible leadership. We need term limits. We do not need professional politicians in our country.
Thank you, Mr. Asatero. Mr. Spiegelman.
And the most dangerous thing for a politician that feels invulnerable in his position is to raise up our debt limit far beyond the ability of this city ultimately to handle comfortably. Like, for example, the last 2 years where we had operating deficits, and this year the mayor and council had to fight off a $10 to $12 million projected deficit. Yes, term limits. That is what this city needs for its elected officials. The same as the President of the USA, the Governor of Indiana, and all other general elected positions other than in a municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegelman. Mr. Brainerd.
I have to correct Mr. Asatero. There's probably one office that should have term limits in this country, and that's the president, because of the amount of power involved in that particular position. But he said that's not what the founders meant. The founders clearly did not put any term limit provisions in the U.S. Constitution. That wasn't done until the late 1940s for president. So I think it's incorrect to suggest that the founders wanted this or wanted that, unless we have guidance from writings that they made, and they clearly discussed it, Constitutional Convention, and rejected it.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. Mr. Asatero.
We should not allow people to turn political office into a career. We need responsible individuals, continual change, improvements. The thing is, the same person in office for such a long period of time develops a complacency. And it's important to keep in touch with the people. And I can tell you right now, in this election, that I have knocked on more doors than Mayor Briner has, or Mr. Spiegel. And I keep in touch with the people. And over the last 3 years in office, I have kept in touch with the people. Thank you.